Guys, here we are in the brand new M5, and you can see the character of M5 is certainly still there. But perhaps the scariest thing this Halloween is the weight figure of this car. And we have a lot of important questions today, like the weight figure. While it may still be a sleeper supercar in terms of pure horsepower, has it got the dynamism that we expect of the badge M5 and from the company that is best known for driving dynamics? Well, we have a ton of important questions. I can tell you from the get-go that this thing is not as simple as the figures written on paper. It is actually extremely surprising. It's something that I thought might be the case having driven it on track at Salzburg Ring. So today we're going to drive it really hard. We're going to do a launch control. We're going to drive it dynamically. But before all of that, let me fill you in again on how this V8 hybrid system works. And then I want to show you the ton of different styles and specifications that you can choose. Have a look at those, and then we'll come back on the road. So guys, today's episode of RBR is again sponsored by Manscaped. Now Manscaped have done face shavers before. This is my ultimate one, which is the Handyman. I take it on all my press trips because it's small and it's perfect for getting rid of that 3-day shadow. Particularly in between trips for me, this has been just amazing. But this is the Chairman Pro. And he really looks like it, doesn't he? He's just missing a big cigar coming out of his mouth. This is the ultimate face shaver that Manscaped have made. It comes with 2 interchangeable blades. One is similar to the Handyman. It's a foil shaver blade for that ultimate close shave and that soft skin feeling. Then there's a second blade, and they're so easy to interchange. And this is, if you want to have a nice bit of stubble, this is the Precision Trimmer. Both of them are 360-degree blades, and they have this great thing called Flex Adjust technology, where you can see just how adjustable the heads are, and that allows it to keep the contacts onto your skin and get the closest shave possible with comfort. But you can actually lock the heads too. And then you have 3 different settings where you can lock the blade. Sometimes you want that precision cut, and that can be done with this as well. Both blades have been designed to reduce skin irritation with Manscaped's skin-safe technology. And unlike the Handyman, which is good for 3-day shadows, this is great for like up to 5 days. But my favorite things, it's USB-C like all the other Manscaped products and no extra wires. And it has this brilliant LCD screen on here that gives you the battery percentage and a light as well. Truly the Chairman. And you can use it in the wet or in the shower as well because it has waterproof tech as well. So guys, that is the Chairman Pro, truly the boss of Manscaped face shaving. And of course, as an RBR viewer, you get a great discount, 20% off plus free international shipping. Just use my code RBR and you'll get 20% off and free shipping. Guys, a huge thanks for always supporting our most awesome sponsor. Now, let's get back to the car. So guys, we have a number of important questions when it comes to this car, right? We've got the weight figure, which is the scariest thing. We've got the horsepower, we've got the entirety of the hybrid system, how that whole system works, what else have they changed under the skin. I thought it's really worth having a recap. Now, the good thing about this entire situation is that we do have the engine that we want, which is the V8, whichever way you look at it. And that V8 is then paired to a battery and an electric motor. And between them both, they give us 727 brake horsepower, 1,000 Newton meters of torque, and a claimed 0 to 60 of 3.5 seconds in the sedan. There is a breakup of how much power the V8 gives, which is 585, and the rest comes from the electric motor and the hybrid setup. Now, the good thing about this hybrid setup is that the battery doesn't sit on the rear axle like a lot of the rivals, like AMG, Porsche, etc. Instead, it's in a horseshoe shape in the middle of the car. Think kind of like how Taycan had it and how e-tron GT had it. And the benefit of this is that little 18 kilowatt battery can be in the best place in terms of center of gravity to help negate this extra 400 to 500 kg that the hybrid system adds, which is pretty much the norm of adding a hybrid system into a car like this. Now, adding 400 to 500 kg is kind of like having a lion sitting inside of the car. But also remember everything else that we have going on here. This is a modern car with modern suspension systems, rigidity measures, etc. We've got M's adaptive suspension with active dampers. We've got a variable ratio steering with a fixed mounting. We've got rear wheel steering of 1.5 degrees to turn this longer car now. We've got the usual 8-speed Steptronic gearbox, which is paired to the entire hybrid system as well. And of course, M's xDrive with fully variable power, able to turn on rear-wheel drive mode and the drift mode. So there is a lot of good things in here as well. The only way to answer whether that's all going to translate properly is when we go out for a drive in a second. So you will get to see that today, which is great. And remember, we also have the Touring, which you will see in a couple of weeks on RBR as well, which will be in this specification. This is about 100 kg heavier, just about, versus the sedan, so really should be indiscernible. But you'll get to see that in a few weeks on RBR as well. Now, one question is, why would one go for something like this instead of going for the M3? And I think a big part of that is that hybrid system, because this battery, unlike rivals like AMG, actually gives you significant amount of range. In the sedan, we're talking 69 kilometers, around about 43 miles of range, which is actually significant for daily use. And that's something I'm going to show you when we're driving. What's the real world range? You can charge it up to 7 kilowatts at the moment. In November, we get an update up to 11 kilowatts as well. So this is all good stuff, and this differentiates this car, at least in terms of fuel efficiency and saving some money, from something like an M3. Of course, there's many other differences. The interior is 5 Series, so much more technology. It's trimmed in a really nice way. The seats are more comfortable. The rear has a lot more space, and the boot is not compromised despite this being a hybrid, thanks to where the battery position is as well. Now, the other side of this, actually, which I think is so compelling for the M5 and the M5 Touring, is the price of the car. This is one of the heroes in the new car market at the moment, because everything else is so overpriced. Our sedan starts at around about 111k in the UK, and the Touring is a couple of grand more. And when you compare it to things like AMG's GT63 e-Performance, which is 170k worth of car for the same thing with no electric range, basically. Or you compare it to the Panamera, which is a good 30-40 grand more expensive. Or you compare it to the 4-cylinder C63, which is the same price. This is genuine. I can't think of anything else that is doing what this does as in terms of bang for buck. Even the new GT3 is up 30k. So, you know, bear this in mind, that this is a car that's giving you value for money for the same performance that the rivals is. Let's see now what it does on the road. Right guys, welcome to the Dream Factory, as Em likes to call it. This is their press garage, and more often than not a playground for some amazing things that you'll probably not see anywhere. Today is all about M5, so they've got some beautiful cars here from M5's history. And this is something that we will dive into at RBR because we love history, not on this video, on a future one when we do M5 in the UK. But today I want to show you all the different colours, the specifications that you can get. We've got a bunch of Tourings here, a few sedans. Let me show you each one by one. Right guys, let's start with actually the car that you're going to see in our next video, which is the Touring video. It's not far away, and this is obviously finished in what I like to call the fake taxi spec. It's probably not going to be your first choice on something huge like the M5, but it's not as bad as you might think. It's actually really quite exciting to look at. It is a big car to have this type of color on it, but somehow all the cuts and all that M muscle, the M5 seems to pull it off pretty nicely. Then we come on to our next one, which is actually, though it looks black, and though it's called carbon black, it's actually a darker shade of blue, metallic. And this is a really classy looking spec with the chamfered edge wheels, again with the ceramics. I could see myself rocking this. It's understated, but still looks unmistakably M. So if you're looking for a classier spec, that's nice. This, again, a bit more out there, but actually looks fabulous on the M5 Touring. I'm kind of half regretting not actually going for the red for the video, because this looks so damn good. They've gone pretty wild with this specification, so we've got the red, and you've got the red and black interior. But somehow it all ties together actually really quite nicely, particularly with the black wheels. It's a good sporty spec. Yep, red really works on the Touring, and I think it will work pretty damn well on the sedan. I've not actually seen a red sedan yet, but I imagine looking at this that would look quite impressive. I did play around with the configurator, and this was pretty much the exact spec that I came out with, other than a little wheel change. And that's your standard white with the red and black interior. Quite a classic performance car specification, but I think actually works really well on the M5. It's got a lot of curves and a lot of breakup with the black parts that I think just makes this entire spec work really quite nicely. And you can see that M chunk on the rear. This one, probably my favorite of the lot. Now there's a couple more to show you just over here. There's another one for you guys. This is Grigio Telesto, which, as you can probably tell from the name, Lamborghini borrowed color, which on the sedan, particularly with that really nice interior in there, looks pretty damn stunning, I think. What's great about BMW M still is they're giving so many options in terms of individualization, paint, interiors, and performance parts, really to make these cars your own. And I'd say make them your own for spending tons of money, but these are actually some of the most affordable and correctly priced performance cars in the world at the moment, which really excites me about the M5. Forgetting everything else for a minute, this is good value for money, and it's great that you can really customize it to your liking. Okay guys, so first 100 yards, we're going to put the car into M1, everything is in sport. And of course the car is fast, there's no doubt about the horsepower figure despite the weight. You know, this is a really quick car. What's more surprising in the first 100 yards is the steering feel. It's quite pointy, it's a little bit lighter than I would like, and that's with the sport steering on. It's a feeling I don't really like into M5, which has always had slightly heavier steering than its competition. But overall, the steering feel on the front, paired with our 1.5 degree rear wheel steer, gives this quite a pointy feeling. And what's interesting is, despite having that extra weight, because it's all at the bottom of the car, you only really start to perceive it when you brake very, very hard, and that's when, you know, you're very much aware that it's a heavier car. Otherwise, actually, first few turnings that I've had, the car is surprisingly rigid, a lot more than I was expecting. And again, this is not a car, I think, that you can judge purely on what's written on paper. Now, one of the big questions everybody has looking at the facts and figures is it slower than the M5 of the previous generation, given what is written on paper? So to answer that, let us first begin with a launch control, okay? If it's really slower, this will prove it all. Let's see what the new M5 manages. Really good launch, good grip. So guys, we've managed a time of 3.19 seconds. So that's, you know, 0.3 quicker than the official figures, which is great, and it's quite normal for these type of cars. It's very close to the last generation. I think I was doing easily 3.1, maybe 3 dead in the competition. The competition, lighter, power to weight ratio is better. And of course it sits a level higher than this car, whichever way you cut it. And like we said, there is room for a comp in this generation, given the fact that our V8 is purposely underpowered. It does gnaw at me a little that we managed to get 3.1 seconds consistently in the M4 LCI, which means that the M3, which is a topic I really want to keep in your mind, keep at the forefront of your mind, the M3 LCI is going to be potentially doing sub 3, if that's that case. So, you know, who's the real super saloon of BMW M now? Is a question I'm asking myself. There's no doubt that this is so much more powerful, but there's other layers to this car. It's a bit of an ogre, it's like an onion, it's got layers. So we're going to discuss some of those. First, let us get on to the main topic, which is weight. How much do you feel the weight? How is it affecting our handling balance? And like I said in like my first 100 yards, the initial feeling is good because we have the battery at the bottom. It's kind of a lot more like the Taycan, e-tron GT, etc., rather than having the battery on the rear like you find in most of these performance plugins. And what that actually does is, like the Taycan, like the e-tron GT, is disguise the weight in a big way. You pair that then to M's adaptive suspension, and it really does an uncanny impression of a car that doesn't have that hybrid system or that weight figure. It's quite astonishing. And this is the thing about modern cars, and I say it a lot now in my videos, that we look at the figures, we look at the weight, and we think, no, this is just going to drive wrong. But so much thought and so much R&D goes into these modern cars now to get rid of the feeling of weight. Partly down to the fact that manufacturers have to deal with EVs now, and they're so much heavier, so a lot of thinking and a lot of time going into that topic. Which means, like we benefit in the plug-in hybrids getting more range because people are putting that much more time into batteries, similarly, with the weight figure, a company like BMW M has that much more knowledge, that much more learning that they can apply to a car like this and hide the weight. And for the most part, I think it really does work. You know, this is nothing as cumbersome as the GT63 SE Performance that I hate driving. This is really, for most people, for most intents and purposes, it feels just like an M5 should. Now, of course, there are times when you really do feel the weight, and I think it's mainly under hard braking, where you just cannot hope to hide that massive weight figure. It still does a really good impression because getting out of the corner, the control through the corner is still very good, but you are aware of it, and like most heavy cars, it is something that you feel you have to compensate for in your steering, in your braking, when you're applying the throttle, etc. So, you know, you haven't suddenly got the nimble feeling of an M5 CS or an M5 Comp from the past. That's not there. But it can still attack the corner at, you know, vicious speeds. So it's a different style of driving, I feel, that you have to kind of get used to, where you're doing a similar job, but you're not feeling as nimble as you were in the past. Now, instead of the weight, actually, some of my bugbears on this car are different. And the main one, I think, actually, is the gearbox, where, let's say I want to downshift, it literally takes a whole second. Let's go into M2, so it's, you know, it's in the most geared up form. Did you see that? That was a whole second, maybe a second and a half before the car decided to downshift. Upshifts are okay, maybe half a second, but a downshift in a performance car of this category should not be that slow. And that's top level, Sport Plus, everything dialed up. And really that's quite bothersome to me, so much so that I stopped using the gears when driving the car, which is not a good sign really, and I haven't had that in a modern BMW M for a long time. I don't know whether it's an early car. I'm sure it's something that could be addressed with software. I mean, the upshifts are okay, sometimes they're a little bit jerky, but that might be part of the character of the car. So that's a real shame. That's something I was not expecting. It's not something I found in any other new BMW M car. I've driven M4 LCI, M4 CS. My M2 is not like that. No recent car reminds me of this type of laggy downshift. And that's quite the dichotomy versus the power delivery itself, which in every single mode that you go into using the M hybrid setup, whether it's just normal hybrid mode we're in, which is your standard mode, the power and the way that the V8 and the electric motor work together is absolutely flawless, actually. Never ever does the car feel underpowered. And actually there's no better example of this than the boost function, where you hold down the left paddle just for more than a second and you get the boost function with the logo, and it gives you the full power of this hybrid system on demand. And that actually works really well, and it's interesting. It's like a new age kickdown almost, to provide the full power from the system. So I love that element. I love the way that the V8 works with the electrical side. And let's talk about the V8 for a second in terms of sound. If we go into M2 mode, which is the most aggressive, you get a nice rumbly V8 sound. Pops and bangs are kind of like more knocks against the back of the boot wall than any particular loud sound, at least in Europe and the UK. That's how it's going to be. It's nothing as thunderous as the Panamera or AMG's older examples of V8s or the RS6. It's a more refined sound that I think we've always been kind of used to in the M5 cars. Certainly not like the M5 CS. As I said, region dependent, this is going to sound a lot better in the Middle East and in the USA, which is a huge market for this car. And it's nice, you know, I think it's a lot nicer than BMW's inline sixes that I've lived with a lot over the last few years. It's my main cars. I think I'd be much, much happier with the V8. Conversely now, of course, this is also part-time EV vehicle, which is bizarre to say for an M5, but it is, and I think it's a big part of the draw towards this car. So what we do is we go into M hybrid, and you can choose electric. The other one is E-control, which keeps your battery level at the same level continuously. We've got 65 kilometers range, and when I started it was the 69 kilometers range that BMW M tell us about, which is great, and it's kept filling that back up as we've been driving faster and faster, which is good because that's what you want this type of mild plug-in system to be like. You want it to recharge itself when you're driving faster, and this car does. Now, driving in pure electric mode, in the countryside, through towns, this is a big pull to me of this car. I really, really value it. Because as someone who's bought a lot of performance super saloons, the worst part of owning those cars is throwing your money down the drain, doing the suburban, the short trips, the non-performance drives. And when you've got a car that can manage high speeds while in electric mode only and doing, you know, almost over 40 miles in fact, on the electric range, that really means a lot to me, because that's usable miles that I can use every day, school runs, grocery, all the usual stuff, going to and from work. This is genuinely usable electric range. Now, this is a car that I really want to order at the moment because of this reason, and just how much bang for buck it is at 111, 113k. There's nothing out there even close to this at that price point. But, you know, for the point of saving money, for having the electric range as well, the best part of the EV world and the best part of the performance world with the V8 in there, it's just such a huge tick box. And then we can head back into Dynamic Plus mode. And the V8 turns on. That's great. This is a car that is genuinely really fun to drive fast. You will find reasons to want to put it into Dynamic Plus mode and give it all the beans you can, because it will reward you like M5s have in the past. And that's really my main takeaway from this car. Now, let's talk about the suspension. While M Adaptive Suspension is clearly helping us in terms of hiding the weight, keeping the car rigid, in terms of body roll, how is it in terms of living with it daily? And that's a bit more of a difficult question to answer, because our roads in Germany, even out here in the suburbs, are perfect. Really, the test for that, I think, will be in the UK. It feels firm to me. It feels M5 firm. M5 has always been a firm car. I don't think it's going to be firm to the point of hindering you from using it. Like I said, modern suspension systems, so much better than they used to be. This feels familiar to all of those that I've lived with, where I think it's going to be absolutely fine in daily duties. The proof of the pudding, I think, will be in the UK. I cannot judge this in Europe, so stay tuned for our UK review of the M5. And I think if you did choose an M3 over this, there's a lot that you would miss in terms of particularly the hybrid mode, the electric mode, saving cost on that, the luxuriousness, the comfort that is just innate with the 5 Series itself. But equally then, to be fair, the M3, particularly in LCI, I think is going to be such, you know, it's now so much closer to M5 than it ever was before. And that's not just in terms of pure performance, that's also in terms of how well it's trimmed, how luxurious that car can be as well. The gap between them is closed. This has kind of brought things in from 7 Series while bringing in this whole hybrid element. But for a pure sporty super saloon, the M3 is hard to argue with. And then, of course, you have a level above with the CS. Now, the price of this car quite close to things like the M60, the fully EV M version of the 5 Series at the moment, and things like the Taycan and the e-tron GT. I would have this every day of the week over those cars for the purposes of driving fast, because this is exciting. It has a V8, it's got the dynamics that I'm expecting of the badge. That being said, I think this is dangerously close to how fast the M3 is. The M3 is that good. And I think because of that, there is definitely room for a competition, maybe even a CS, and have shown no sign of slowing down when it comes to making more special models and building on their portfolio. I can't see why the M5 would be any different in that regard. It's literally begging for it. This engine can push out more power. Why not do it? Remember one thing, that launch control figure, basically identical to what I managed with Porsche's Panamera. The Panamera got basically no flack for being almost the same weight as this car. The M5 gets all of the flack for being the poster boy for super saloons. But in reality, even without the fancy active suspension that the Panamera has, this car handles really quite well. And I say kudos to BMW M for that. The M5 is the first out of Audi and AMG to do it. Will AMG even do a V8 E63? We don't even know at the moment. Let's hope. That's going to be a similar weight, etc. No doubt the Audi RS7 Avant, which will replace the RS6, is going to be a similar weight as well. So this is the new world we live in. The key thing is who hides it best, who makes best use of the hybrid system, and let's see in the future what everyone else does. Now, I've got some very strong opinions on this car. There are opinions that many of you may not agree on. So let's stop and have a little chat together about the M5 Hybrid. So guys, I completely agree with you on one point. If it was a pure ICE car, then undoubtedly it would be better for dynamics, right? I'm sure that there's a parallel world out there somewhere where BMW M didn't have to accede to the emission regulations and they just based a new version on the M5 CS and it would have been so much better dynamically. But the world as it stands just doesn't allow for that. And either you have a complete disaster like the 4-cylinder C63 and it's a car that nobody wants to buy, or the M5 could have gone full EV, and that is completely inappropriate for that badge. Instead, we actually have the engine that we really want, which is the V8. And in addition to that, you have all the benefits of the hybrid. And I don't think that that's a downside. If I personally was in the market for a super saloon at the moment, I would prioritize the hybrid over the internal combustion engine pure versions. Because the worst part of owning a super saloon is when you have to waste fuel on non-performance trips. Whereas with this car, with almost over 40 miles of electric range, you're going to save so much money and then use that money when you want it, which is to drive fast. And the M5 drives like an M5. It's super fast and it's still agile despite chugging along the whole hybrid element. And to my eyes, it's one of the best looking super saloons that we can buy on the market at the moment. And remember, this thing is pretty much the bargain of the year at the moment, considering how expensive new cars are. To have a 700 plus horsepower super saloon, that's a plug-in hybrid, at what, 113K? That's incredible. And I'm not going to let one scary weight figure deter me from enjoying a car like this.